Well, my name is Tonya Lindsey, and I served on the Survivor Council for 2017 and 2018. The impact of the council that I served on, it was a space that allowed me to be able to use my voice, and what they can say is my truth. I didn't have to shy from the truth because everyone there was a victim of a crime of some kind. So it really gave me a place where I felt like that I can actually express my anger, my frustration, disappointment, or whatever I was feeling. It was a place where my emotions could be raw and truthful. Um, and one thing that I would like the public to know that I have learned through my journeys with the council and other avenues and entities is that at the end of the day, whether you're a victim of a sex crime or a victim of a homicide or a victim of trafficking or anything, the needs are still the same until we as humans decide and determine that all of our needs have to be met and that they all should equally be addressed. Then this will continue to, um, I guess the best word, if we all can think of each other as victims regardless of what the crime is, then that allows us to have respect for each crime to make a difference, whether it be a sex crime or homicide or whatever the crime may be. So that's what I want the public to know. We have to start thinking about victims as human beings with different journeys.
I think with my experience with the Survivors Council, luckily I have met others like me, like Tonya, which is awesome. And we've been able to collaborate quite a bit together and work on new things for homicide, which is lacking in our state. And this council has allowed us to show that gap and for people to recognize that there is a gap in services for homicide survivors. So I'm very thankful for that. And it also gives you confidence to be able to step up on your platform and you believe that people are listening to you and that they care and that they believe the impact that victimization has had on you.
Okay. The impact of the Survivors Council has been absolutely amazing. I personally believe that voices of survivors need to be heard in every single entity, at every single table. I feel like society so often is talking about so many crucially important topics and not actually involving the people that have survived them or are currently going through them. And I think that those voices are the most important parts of all of those conversations. And the Survivors Council really validated that and really formed a group of powerful, resilient, and truth-telling humans that literally come together for the purpose to be able to speak their truth, share their journeys, no matter how difficult that may be, and to be able to bring awareness to topics and to situations and to trauma that has really devastated and impacted their lives so that the other people that are going through it now or that may have to go through it, unfortunately, will be able to have a bit of peace that they're not alone in it. And also to know that other people are fighting for justice and their rights and to be able to have that seat at the table that they're so worthy of. So I am so honored that I was able to take a seat at our table and to be able to, due to that opportunity, be able to go in many different situations, workshops, other tables, and meet incredible other survivors so that we, as survivors ourselves, don't feel alone, but that we can create that space for other people too.
For me, the Survivors Council, it exceeded any expectation that I really had. Going into it, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I feel like for me professionally, this is not what I do. This isn't my line of work. And so I feel like the Survivors Council gave me a platform that I never would have been able to have had in any other capacity. It allowed me to have credence and some integrity behind what I was trying to say and behind the message that I was trying to get out. And I felt like having the Survivors Council not only gives you the platform, but it gives you an opportunity to have your voice heard in places that otherwise you wouldn't be able to get into without being a part of this council. There's credence behind what this council does and just in the importance of their name and the doors that opens for you. And I feel like not only just for me personally, but I feel like the Survivors Council has also opened people's eyes to other types of crime that are occurring in our state that don't get as much of attention. I also feel like the Survivors Council is able to not label us, but allow us to come up with what we feel we are. Yeah. And instead of saying you're a victim, but you're a survivor, I think it allowed everybody to just come to the table equally. And I think too many times what we see is survivors are having to hustle outside of a circle to feel worthy because they're not a victim of a specific type of crime. And the council is able to open that circle and extend services to everyone. And in doing so, they're able to provide healing for people and for survivors of all types of crime who struggle to find their place, not only within the state, but their place within the justice system and within the legal system that they are trying to seek help from.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I think that by being a survivor and having to go through those processes, it's really important for society to know how strong and how brave and how incredibly resilient survivors of domestic violence are, of intimate partner violence, of sexual assault, rape, gun violence, what it takes to literally speak your truth and to be vulnerable and to relive those traumas is something in itself to honor and to really take time to listen to and validate. Every single survivor on this council, just by being here and by applying and by being a part of this council, has in those moments been the bravest that they have ever been, because they're continuing to go back over and back over and back over and in order to love on others and in order to bring importance to other survivors. Anyone in this, that will be viewing this, or anyone that is going to be in any type of communications with anybody on the Survivors Council, that they see not only how strong they are, but how worthy of being heard that they are. And that society needs to listen up, plain and simple. And they need to, when a survivor speaks, they need to realize not only how difficult it is to do that, but then they need to sit and listen, and they need to advocate for them, because so many other people are watching, and so many other people around you have been through the same thing, whether you know it or not. And how you react to that person, how you validate that person, how you listen, is opening the doors for other survivors' voices to also be heard, and so they feel empowered and welcomed and honored to speak their truth as well. So whether you believe or whether you think a situation is right or wrong, listening in itself is what is so crucially important in saying, I believe you and I will support you in this, so that anyone else realizes that's an open door for them to do the same. And that is what the voices of the council have really represented to me, is the bravery and not only surviving but thriving, and that the healing journey is going to be ongoing, as resiliency is, but that when we come together, when we speak up together, when we support one another, it is a ripple effect for the rest of the world to be able to feel like they can do the same, and that there's other people that have been through similar situations and that we're not alone in that.
I'm a survivor of a mass shooting, and I think one thing I would just like people to know is that the title of victim extends far beyond those who are physically injured, those who are emotionally injured, those who are present, those who are in a building or in a community where this happens, but it affects hundreds of people, because when mass violence happens, we have mass numbers of people who now have survived something unimaginable, whether it's through a family member or whether they were directly affected. But one of the things that I feel we don't understand is that survivors of mass trauma are just like any other survivor. When the cameras are gone and when the media disappears, our needs don't disappear, and the services that we need shouldn't disappear either. And so I would really like for people to understand the effects of mass violence and liken them to those of other types of violence. It's really not any different. It extends for an unforeseeable amount of time. And one thing that I've learned in working with survivors of all different types of crime, not just those who've been in mass shootings, but in all other facets, is that our crimes and our victimhood, for lack of better words, may be different, but we're all the same kind of different. And there's a book that's called The Same Kind of Different as Me, and that's where that quote comes from. But when I look at people, I realize it doesn't matter necessarily what brings you to the table. It's the fact that you're at the table that counts. And I would really hope that people would continue to expand the table and open seats for people that we wouldn't necessarily look at and say they're a victim, but to understand that the way we have labeled a person a victim or a survivor is a definition that needs to change, and it needs to be one that's inclusive of all people. And I feel like many times people who survive mass trauma often can get overlooked when they feel as if somehow their experience was less than because they weren't directly involved. And that is absolutely the farthest thing from the truth, and something that would isolate a person into feeling that way. And when we open up the table to victims, and when we bring people to the table, we bring in voices that collectively allow us to see we're different, but we're the same kind of different.